New York Public Library.
You got it.
Change of plan. The Continental. Can you see that he's received by the concierge?
Yes, sir, Mr. Wick.
Good dog. Good dog.
And that's a clip from John Wick 3, Parabellum. Delighted to say Keanu Reeves is back on the show. Hello, Keanu. How are you, sir?
I'm well, thank you, Simon.
It's very nice to see you, sir.
Nice to see you.
And you're looking trim and fine.
Oh, well, that's kind of you, sir.
It looks as though you might have been to John Wick boot camp recently.
I was in John Wick boot camp.
Tell us how John Wick boot camp compared with the previous John Wick boot camps.
It was awesome. We went back to the judo and jiu-jitsu training, gun manipulation. And then this time we added some horse training, which was, I really enjoy riding horses. And I had a great teacher, a gentleman named Tad Griffith, who's a second-generation trick rider. And because I had to get out of the saddle, and then there was some other training there. It was great.
The photographs that came out a while back of you on the horse in New York really set the internet crazy.
Oh, that's fun.
And having seen and enjoyed the film, I don't think I've ever seen a horse used as a weapon and as an escape vehicle.
Horse foo. We have gun foo, we had car foo, now we have horse foo. Yeah, it was really exciting. After Chapter 2, Chapter 3 takes place literally a direct cut after Chapter 2, and John's on the run out of Central Park in New York City, and I thought it might be fun as he's trying to escape to get on a horse. And Chad Stahelski, the director and visionary, thought that was a fine idea.
Yeah. So as the film starts, I remembered quite how exhausted I felt at the end of 2. Mm-hmm. And then we see you and I think, oh, yeah, that's right. I remember. You're like out, you're completely out of it. And then by the end of this film, goodness knows where you've got to. I mean, and we live every single blow.
Yes, great.
With you. One of my favorite deaths, this isn't a spoiler because it's very early on, is death by book.
Yes.
Right at the very beginning.
Well, John Wick is all about weapons of opportunity. We had that legend in Chapter 1 about killing a man with a pencil. And so in Chapter 2, I thought, we have to see that. And then in Chapter 3, Chad really wanted to open up the world. So not only the world of the Continental and the high table, but also in the action. So we took that idea of weapons of opportunity and we went to the library.
Yeah. He's a very cultured assassin because as people was, and again, this is very early on, so we're not giving too much away, I don't think. You kill this guy with a book and then you put it back on the shelf. Like this is...
Right, but it's not just any book.
No.
Right, so...
No, but
there's a reason for that.
There is, of course. And in this movie, we learn more about the John Wick universe and the backstory. If anyone's missed the first 2, get us up to speed so that we know where we are as we start Parabellum.
Oh my gosh, like a whole recap of Chapter 1 and 2?
Well, in a sentence,
in a sentence,
or a paragraph, whatever.
A man fighting for his life in a world of assassins, and under that, the world of a guild, the High Table. John, at the end of Chapter 2, was made Excommunicado, and there's an open contract for his life. Excommunicado means he can't get any help or services from the world of the Continental, which is a kind of hotel that we find all over the world, a kind of safe house in a way. And the open contract is because he's killed a member of the High Table, and the High Table wants some revenge. Or actually, John has broken some rules, and so there is some... penalties, consequences being made.
The rules and the consequences in the guild, it's almost religious in its language. You're talking about excommunicado. It's almost a faith, isn't it, that we're talking about here?
Yeah, and with the High Table, we introduce the idea of fealty. So, the Continental has rules, like no business can be conducted on company grounds. And with the High Table, we have this idea of fealty. Chad Stahelski, the director, and the world of John Wick, I think, has a lot of mythology in it. We take a lot from here and there. I think there's actually some of the samurai code, certainly religious overtones, Templars, knights. It's a real kind of, what can we say? I don't know. a meta world, a modern world.
There was
mashup.
When you came on the show last time, we were talking about John Wick being a kind of a righteous man, whether he was a righteous man, and I asked you whether he was good or evil, and your answer was, you said it's Quantum Baby, and that particular
meaning both are true.
Yeah, but that has been quoted on the show ever since you said it. It's Quantum Baby has become a thing. And we have a listener at the University of Melbourne in Australia called Imogen Crump, and she's putting together all the University of Melbourne's teaching about quantum physics, and she's called it It's Quantum Baby after your quote on this interview last time.
Nice.
So your influence is spilling into. In fact, I can show you the front page of the website. There you go. That's the University of Melbourne.
It's Quantum Baby. Imagine the world as we understand it is just the tip of the iceberg. Underneath that iceberg, at the atomic level and smaller, is the quantum world.
There you go. And that's all because stuff you said in the last interview. Speaking of which, if you put those headphones on, we had a question from a listener when you were talking to us about John Wick 2. So I'm going to play you the clip from the interview a couple of years ago. Here we go. James Golding, I think the Continental Hotel could get its own spin-off or TV series, which would be a first, actually, wouldn't it, for a hotel to get its own spin-off? But it's intriguing.
A spin-off? Well, I know. What did Faulty Towers? What happened with them? Did they get a spin-off?
I don't think they did.
No?
No.
They should have.
Would you be interested in setting that up?
The Faulty Tower Continental?
Yeah. John Wick.
Where it's like the failed assassins, the guys who can't really do it, who don't really want to be criminals.
Imagine that just for a moment. Faulty Towers becomes
John Cleese is the head of the kind of Faulty Tower underworld.
Ian McShane would probably fit quite happily in both. There's the connection.
Yeah, that's where he he goes there on the weekend.
This is a great idea, which you've just had. So that's a couple of years ago. So if we now spool forward a few years, is it true that the Continental is indeed about to get its own spin-off series?
I think they're trying. Lionsgate, who's the studio who's releasing and paid for John Wick, is interested in creating a John Wick-inspired television show called The Continental.
So I just, James Golding, who's the listener who had that idea a couple of years ago, if he writes to you at some stage and says, that was my idea, then...
No. Maybe a bit of a stretch.
Maybe a bit of a stretch.
But it could be in the Gestalt.
It could. John Cleese would run it rather well, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Does the fact of having a bigger budget make a difference to the way you set out to make a John Wick film?
Certainly the resources have an impact. Yeah, I think where that happened in Chapter 3 is we got to go to Morocco and film in the desert. That wouldn't have been possible without the resources. And I think probably some of the action, certainly, like the motorcycle fight with the swords. And even shooting the horse sequence in New York, I think there were a lot of... the resources certainly had an impact in terms of the scale of the film.
But the heart of the film, and you were talking about your director, Chad Stahelski, who, as everyone knows, I think it was your stunt double on The Matrix. That's the heart of its success, isn't it? Because he knows what you can do, and he knows how hard you work, and he's seen you do that. And every movie, whatever the budget, has that at its heart, and that's why John Wick is the success.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I called Chad the visionary. He has an incredible vision for the film in its tone, speaking about the motifs and themes that run throughout the film, certainly the action. I'm there to serve. For me, I consider it, I'm like the limit of the vision. So the more I can do, the more of Chad's vision is revealed.
And when you say you're the limit of the vision,
I am.
What does that mean?
Well, I mean, he might have a vision for a certain sequence, certainly action-wise, and he's limited by what I can do. So the more that I can do, the more that, we can see more of the vision.
It seems you can do quite a lot still.
I try, yeah. And I love the role and I love the world, and, I love physical acting. I love the idea of doing immersive action so that connection between the character and the audience is strong and immersive, and just, because action is story. And, the more story that I can tell, I think for me, I enjoy that, and I think it has a positive impact for the audience.
Early on in the movie, there's an image of Harold Lloyd on a billboard, and I wondered if that was just like a nod to exactly what you were just talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. That's intentional by Chad. Yeah,
An homage
absolutely.
to silent movies.
Yeah, and to the performance and the technology. In terms of what Harold Lloyd had to do and you know, the performers of that era, they were very technical and, you know, in terms of the props and how they performed and the quote-unquote gags that they were telling, that's what was happening. And I think, you know, that resonates with Chad's vision of creating performance in the John Wick action. You know, it's very much performance-based. It's like it's happening in front of you. And I think that was the spirit of what the silent films was as well.
It must give you a great sense of satisfaction to see the success of the John Wick movies, the John Wick idea, and many other Hollywood films kind of catching up with what you're doing.
I mean, certainly we've seen examples of that where, you know, you come across a script where it's like they'll describe an action sequence and they'll go like, you know, this is John Wick action. So it's cool to see that the ambition of it being aspirational. It's not easy, John Wick action.
No, I don't think anyone's going to get to the end of a film and think that it's easy. And I'm guessing that there's John Wick 4.
We'll see. You know, we only get to tell these stories if we make a film and a story that's entertaining and people like. So we'll see how it goes. I love the film. I think it's great, and hopefully other people will too.
And before we just had a colon, John Wick colon 2. Now we get John Wick colon 3 hyphen Parabellum. So you've added in with extra punctuation. What can you tell us about Bill and Ted?
Bill and Ted Face the Music. Yeah, we're finding our characters a couple of decades later, and they still haven't written the song that they were told was supposed to save the world or unify love and everything. So we find them still trying to write that song and save the world, I guess. And the future comes down and says, where's that song? Because there's trouble afoot in the universe.
You're smiling as you're telling us this story. You've enjoyed all this.
Well, I mean, it's good, clean fun, isn't it?
Keanu, it's always good to speak to you on the program. I love the quote. I came across the Lawrence Fishburne quote last night. I don't know if you see. He said, Keanu can be a very monastic cat.
You know, it's, you know, I mean, certainly with John Wick making those films, you know, it's such a gift that it demands everything. So it's great to be of service and to have that gift of focus and getting to play.
So he's right, is Lawrence Fishburne. Keanu, thank you very much for coming in.
All right, thank you.